All right. So this is day 8 of the 30 Days of Men in Recovery for National Recovery Month. And I am here with my good friend Tim Harrington, who I've known some time now. And we've connected in various ways, professionally, personally, professionally. And it's just always great to laugh with Tim, but also be able to turn on a dime to a very serious topic. So, Tim, thanks so much for joining me.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks for asking. Appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. So every conversation starts the exact same way. What is the greatest gift that recovery has given you to help you be the man you always knew you could be?
I'd have to say that the first thing that came to mind when you actually asked that question off camera was being teachable. I mean, I didn't even know, I had no context. I'm obviously talking to you as, from the armchair quarterback view. Luckily, having the ability to look back almost 15 and a half years. And what I would say is that when it really changed for me, and it wasn't right when I got sober, it was about 5 years, something shifted in me, and I just became really, really curious about how far I could take this in terms of just becoming more present in my life. And I had a lot of great teachers. Amazing.
And so, of course, when you say being teachable, I mean, that hits up against a lot of what, we refer to as the man rules. Being teachable means asking for help.
Yep.
Being teachable means admitting we don't know everything.
Yep.
And being teachable means not having to always be right. So
yep.
Being teachable is, that's a big one. So how can you, as they say, can you unpack that?
Okay, now I'm sweating. So what it means to me is I did come to the rooms I came to with all the man rules intact. And I'll never forget, and the context for the man rules obviously is the first time I heard you speak, and that was a jaywalker some years ago. And that was really impactful because that was really my first real introduction into the man rules in that context, right? Seeing them in front of me, having an opportunity to look at them and how they worked in my life. And so speaking with you today, what I know is that was a turning point in my life. So you are one of those teachers I talk about that shifted me. And so I really appreciate that. I appreciate the work you do. It has made a tremendous impact on me. And then I feel like because of that, I've been able to sort of, pay it forward, if you will. So unpacking being teachable means to me is that I do run up against the ego, that part of me that wants to figure it out, that part of me that thinks I should figure it out or I should know the answer and all those kinds of things. And I'll tell you, I know because you and I, we do some work on ourselves, and a lot of that work really was what kicked it even to a higher gear, a higher level. And just, I got unpacked. I didn't really even do the unpacking, I got to tell you. A lot of help. So I don't know if that answered your question, but help me.
No, I think it absolutely does. I mean, first, thank you for those kind words. I always try to distinguish between the message and the messenger, because I'm a very imperfect example of that message. But, I think when you think of having to have the answers, when you think of not asking for help, I mean, it's so destructive to a man's life, to a man's relationships. And of course, that personal work that we've had the opportunity to do, it moves it from that intellectual discourse to a much more visceral and intimate discourse in all of our relationships, right? So, I mean, when I was out there, even when I came to do that first presentation that you saw me at, I was far from being where I am now as far as my own grounding, my own awareness. I mean, like, not intellectual awareness, but kind of rooted spiritual awareness. So the teachability, I think, is important for us as men, especially to acknowledge that it doesn't mean that we're not going to make mistakes. In fact, maybe that's part of the teachability, but I think there's still this pressure of like, oh, well, now that I'm saying teachability is something that's so important to me, I'm never going to go off half-cocked like an idiot, or I'm never going to, come across as arrogant, or I'm never going to preach, anything that somebody's passionate about, and you're passionate about a lot of pieces. How do you navigate between being teachable and putting stuff out there that is raw, provocative, and opinionated?
Yeah, I think I've changed a lot. I remember distinctly the difference between how I participate in the public discourse at a social media level. I was really, again, that's part of the unpacking, and doing the personal work. You don't do it all at once. It's really a process. And every time I would, go to some really core stuff and go to that emotional depth that, man, I never, ever thought even existed, let alone even thought maybe, putting on the Spelunky, that the cave helmet and going deep. Inner space to me is the final frontier. I really found that out when I started doing that deep personal work. And so there is a distinct difference. It's almost like two personalities, right? It's almost like having two characters in one body. And so this to me is about dealing with that dissonance and that disconnect. And that takes a daily sort of engagement and a daily willingness to be corrected.
Yeah. And well, right. That's part of being teachable, right? Is we have the humility to get feedback.
Yes.
From others. I in the last 3 months have gotten some really powerful feedback from me that has allowed me to grow and has allowed me to look at some of my language or look at some of the things that, even though people who know me well know that they're really important to me, if I'm not overtly talking about them, for instance, women's issues and the impact of sexism and sexual assault and rape and all of those issues, how serious that is for women, if I'm not talking about it, then people make up that it doesn't matter to me, or that I'm even pro-rape or some shit like that. I got all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
But I was able to hear it, and I've watched you do the same thing. And so you've moved from somebody who I think who could be very reactive to now more of a facilitator.
Yeah.
You help facilitate stuff. You put out wonderful, you're so passionate about this space of recovery. I love your title, right, for your business, Chief Empowerment Officer. That's great.
Yeah.
And just the recovery aspect. So how do you maintain? As guys, right? We wanna be the man.
Yeah.
Our ego tells us we want to be the man. Other people insinuate that if you're not the man, that maybe you're less than, or, there's all kinds of stuff in the water around having to be the man.
Yeah.
How does that fit in with being teachable and really kind of being the man that you want to be?
Well, I think you'd agree that what's connected with teachability is humility, right? And that's what you're talking about. That's sort of, I think, what I was reliving a lot and prior to sort of getting right-sized about, getting feedback, quote unquote. Feedback to me growing up was a challenge, was all reactive, was all emotional. When you were talking about it, it brought me back literally to sitting in the living room at my house in Madison, Wisconsin. And I think I might've been in 9th grade or maybe 10th grade, and just getting that sit down where those people across from me they were giving me feedback, but it affected me in such a way that I shut down. I shut my I remember, I can feel it in my body right now. Basically what I was saying was like, fuck you. Right. And so you're a hypocrite, or it was all a challenge. And I pushed back because I was hurting and I wasn't feeling like I was really being seen. I was just sort of being lectured and punished and all that stuff. So fast forward all these years, and you've got this social media platform where everybody is just flinging opinions and just all that energy, and it triggered something in me, and I became reactive, and it really just was, it was irresponsible. It was not responsible. I was way further down the track, but it did touch something in me that when I started to get some feedback from people really close to me, I was like, oh, wow. Okay. Thank you. Like, thank you for pulling me back. Because I wasn't getting the full benefit of the discourse, because whether or not I agree or disagree has become less important than, again, what can I learn?
Yeah. And the ability, right, being teachable, I think, is also, what it's been for me has been like, literally, others can teach me. That means others' experience has validity. That means I'm able to see where somebody else is coming from. So when I just a couple weeks ago started getting into a little bit more political stuff than I normally do, some people interpreted it as being partisan, but it really wasn't meant to be partisan. It was more meant to be like, look at this debate, look at this rhetoric that's happening. Yeah. And I had this interaction with this gentleman who I've known on Facebook now for 5 years, and it easily could have gone into this ugly space. But instead, we used the principles of recovery, and it was a really cool exchange, because it was this thing of like, you know what? I don't agree with you, but I value your opinion and I respect where you're coming from. And I'm not going to attack who you are as a human being.
Right. Right.
And we were able to get there together. And I think that's a huge part of being teachable, is that, we don't have to be right, but we don't have to be zealots.
Right. Yeah.
And we can be wrong, whether you're wrong in social media, whether you're wrong in the family with your beautiful daughters or beautiful wife. Is there that congruence? So what is teachability taught you about congruence in your life? Because we all know that a lot of us who put ourselves out there, we can be brilliant and charismatic and funny on the outside, and complete shitheads and just bastards at home.
Yeah.
How does that mesh with teachability?
Yeah, I mean, it's really a maturation process in terms of, continuing to do to taking the risk and putting yourself out there, both in social media, both in my relationship. This is a big thing right now in our relationship, is being vulnerable with each other. And vulnerability, wow, what a huge aspect of connection is that vulnerability piece. And again, that goes right to the man rules. It's like vulnerability. That means you're like, what are you, some kind of pussy, or you know what I mean? Like, yeah, all that stuff. And it's, that's deep. That's deep stuff. And so it's been a slow process as far as getting past the idea that it's like if you don't take it to the next level, then you end up just being roommates.
Yes.
And I end up being an authoritarian figure as a roommate to this woman who we gave birth to these kids. And it's just this weird disconnect, and there's no connection. There's no like closeness, which is what we all really want,
Absolutely. I mean, that's a blog I did actually not too long ago, was that exact issue of who are we with our partners?
Yeah.
Are we roommates?
Yep.
Are we friends?
Right.
Lovers?
Yep.
Are we repeating our parents' pattern? I mean, like, there's so many dynamics that happen in that one relationship.
Oh man.
And what I love about vulnerability, and you bringing up the vulnerability piece, because I've watched you in your own vulnerability in multiple ways, so I know you walk your talk, and I also know that it's very hard.
Yes.
It's very hard. And the beautiful experience that accompanies vulnerability from my perspective is you can't really fake it.
Right. That's right.
I mean, you can, but like, vulnerability doesn't ever stop being challenging. Yeah. In some ways, because if it were, then it's probably not vulnerable.
Right.
Like, you and I can get comfortable sharing parts of ourselves that other people are like, wow, I can't believe you talk about that. I can't believe you do that. Yeah. that's kind of, a more measured vulnerability.
Yeah.
But that vulnerability that you're talking about is such a huge muscle for men to learn how to strengthen.
Yeah.
And that can be so difficult.
Absolutely. And what has made the difference in my overall recovery is this idea of intentionality. So the intention, I feel like when I really make strides, and this is on a daily basis, as a recovering person, or as a discovering person, as I like to say, is it's got to be intentional for me. And that's part of connecting with myself. Do you know what I mean? Like, this idea of intention is like, I have a moment in the morning where I connect with self, because out of self, otherwise I sort of set up my day through an other-centric lens, right? Which I learned from Alan Berger, one of my heroes and mentors, as he is yours, this idea of everything being other-centric. And when I know that my life is different is when I am intentional with myself, when I start my day as a human being, and want to know where I'm at in the moment, so that when I go forth and start to have these interactions with my kids, and which I usually am the first one up and I wake them up, that I can be present, man, because I want to be present. It is a want, probably more of a need, maybe a little of both, depending, but it's intentional for me. And I've really found that to make a big difference. It changes my relationship with concepts, like vulnerability. I gotta be intentional about it, man.
I think the intentionality is everything. And again, being teachable, because I was with a group of men last night, and we were talking about vulnerability, and we were talking about how to be fathers and what it means to be a father. And clearly the guys understood it from an intellectual level.
Yeah.
But even when there was a little bit of conflict in the group, the lack of ability to be vulnerable, the lack of ability to not react, to not kind of puff up into that man rules persona to protect themselves, was so obvious. And so then what I tried to do was then pull them back and say, do you see what's happening? Like, it's in the moment.
Yeah.
It's in the moment that we have to decide it. It's not like when everything's going well and I'm not thrown off, or I'm not feeling really nervous and scared, or feeling that. It's in that moment, being able to do that. And that, I think, is for me, that's where the intentionality has to come in. It's a practice, and it's an ongoing practice and a discipline. Yeah. And I get feedback, and what I used to think was vulnerable, I now realize was throwing up on my wife.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's all part of the journey. So Tim, I love it. I so appreciate you being a part of this. I love for my guests to have the last word. So I just want to say I honor you. I honor you, the work that you've been putting out there, your commitment to family recovery, to just the conversation around recovery. All of that has just been so critical. So how fun for me to be able to share our friendship and this relationship during National Recovery Month. So I just want to thank you for being a part of it. And then, as I say for all of them, take us home.
Well, I've got chills right now, and I think it's really my body vibrating based on an exchange that you and I had when I called you about a particular incident that happened with one of my kids. And I think going to the point of vulnerability, and I think this is really critical, and I feel like it's even more critical for me having daughters, and there's so much that comes with that. And so what I want to say is that we can't do this alone. I cannot do my life the way that I want to do it by myself. And so what I want to say is that I think what embodies a national recovery moment, these 30 days, is that I can't, but we can.
Nice.
Thanks.
Beautifully said. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dan. I love you.
Love you too, man.